Hey everybody, senior writer Caity Rife here, and I am back again with our managing editor Caity PenzeyMoog. Hi Caity.
Hey Caity.
And we are back for another episode of Winter is Here with the AV Club, and we are talking about The Bells, the destruction of King's Landing.
Winter is here.
And Caity, I understand that you're a bit of a mad queen yourself this week.
I think we're all mad queens this week,
Oh yes,
Caity.
I am a mad queen.
My biggest problem, and we'll get into this, but my biggest problem with The Bells is that it sort of flies in the face of the character that has been established of Daenerys Targaryen and the logic of that character. She's been very happy to kill people. That's always come very easy to her, but it's always been consistent with a sort of moral, like an internal moral philosophy that's unique to her, but that is very consistent. She only kills people who have wronged her, who refuse to bend the knee, and who are like just bad people like slavers.
Yeah.
Like, those are the people she kills. And so yeah, it was like a little much to kill the Tarleys, but they didn't bend the knee to her, and it was very consistent. And I think killing Varys was also consistent. And
she does have her own internal moral code, which is a bit authoritarian, but she does have her own moral code. And to be fair, like, this is a feudal society with absolute monarchs, and like, how can you be mad at her for behaving like one? But yeah, like, I've been thinking a lot about the Daenerys Targaryen turn, and thinking about how supposedly George R.R. Martin told the showrunners of Game of Thrones how the story was supposed to end in case, I don't know, he died. But and I could see how in book form this could have played out in a really like impactful novelistic way.
Right.
But instead they were just like, oops, we forgot to make the bitches crazy. Bitches be crazy.
From one episode to the next, you go from having a character who would never kill an entire city of innocent people to someone who just does that.
Yeah.
Just
she's been a
out of
secret
nowhere.
psychopath this whole time, apparently.
Yeah, and they could have set it up better. They could have let this breathe, and it would have been much more convincing. And yes, like, to your point, I think book form, where it's interior monologuing and over 500 pages of Daenerys being isolated and depressed and like alone and without love and without like Jorah and Jon sort of rejecting her because he's actually not into how like cruel she can be, that would work to see her sort of descend into this madness. But it doesn't work from one episode to the next.
Yeah, like, it's lonely at the top for about 15 minutes, and Jon doesn't want to make out with her once, and apparently that is enough to send her into full-on mad queen
There's no
territory.
real descent. It's like they give her
Not
some
really.
tired eye makeup and call it a day, and that's it.
Hey,
and
Amelia Clark's trying. She is trying her best.
Amelia Clark is great. This is like solely the fault of the writers.
Yeah, like, it feels like rushed writing. It feels like unearned. It feels like lazy writing. And it's kind of hard to get over the fact that this show, for so many seasons, you know, even earlier in the episode, we were talking about, like, the coming of women to power and the turning over to the new generation and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I could accept that the more things change, the more they stay the same kind of message. But they're really kind of also wrapping it up in a better, like, that it's bad when women have power and nice guys should rule the world. Like,
And like,
what? After all of this?
yeah, taking someone who has been very clear in her aims, and also the show and the books have taken great pains to show Daenerys surrounding herself with people who will keep her worst impulses in check. She brings Tyrion on, and Tyrion does, you know, stop her from doing this sort of thing before, and she listens to him, and
that's
there's
true.
a reason that he's there, and it's because she respects him and she listens to him. So now all of a sudden that's also gone. She suddenly isn't interested in what Tyrion has to say. She suddenly doesn't know herself like she used to.
Yeah, like, something I could almost see happening in novel form is there's something about being in Westeros that that opens up some like little hidden door in her brain. There's something about being on her ancestral ground where all of her ancestors were tyrants that turns this into it. But that's me grasping at straws for an explanation. That's not something that was established through character.
Exactly.
You know?
There's a lot of ways that this could have gone that would have been very believable if the show had just taken its time to make it believable. But the show rushed through it and and the pacing just feels completely off. It feels like they've
had this
it's like they've
problem for a
skipped a few episodes and they've suddenly just jumped forward in time without doing the character development to get us there.
They've had this problem for a while. This is what happened ever since they outpaced the books. If you remember in earlier seasons of the show, it would take all season for someone to get from Winterfell to King's Landing, and now it happens in like a scene. You know, like they just really accelerated the pacing in a way that, you know, I wouldn't say it's ruined the show, but it definitely is different, and it's definitely not consistent with the kind of storytelling that would have a believable descent into madness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's something that, you know, Martin certainly luxuriates in, like getting from point A to point B and like showing these characters in their full form and spending a lot of time with them. And so you can see how he's just giving Benioff and Weiss the sort of broad strokes, the main plot points to hit, and those showrunners are clearly just not capable of imbuing the show with the kind of like lived-in nuance that Martin brought to it that they had in the early seasons that they don't have
because
now.
they had Martin's source material and now they don't.
So Caity, how do you feel about Jaime, about what happened to him?
Oh, Jaime's end? It's not what I wanted, but I think that one was consistent with his character. Like, he was always going to die with Cersei. Really deep down, like, the two of them can kind of, like, you know, look other places, but they're in this, to use a pretentious French term, a folie à deux, a madness of two. It's like this thing where two people get wrapped up in this really crazy delusion that makes them feel like they're different from the rest of the world, and it happens sometimes with like murder cases and things like that. But that's what Cersei and Jaime have, and that they even say that right before they die. Like, he looks in her eyes and says, "There's no one else." So, as much as I wanted him to live happily ever after with Brienne, this was a more consistent ending with his character, I thought.
See, I sort of agree with you. I always thought that he was going to be drawn back to Cersei one way or another. I think that was always, his arc was always going to be expressed through Cersei. And yeah, Brienne, that was great. Ultimately, sort of like a side note in his development in his arc. And I think she maybe led him to realize that he is a bad person. You know, he is monstrous, and he knew that before, but now he cares. And I didn't quite like how he tells Tyrion, like, I've never actually cared for the people of King's Landing. I don't think that's very consistent, because I think he does care about the people. He stopped the Mad King from setting the city on fire.
Yeah, that's why he did that.
That's why he's the king killer. So that felt a little bit inconsistent, and also sort of like maybe in a book where there's room for this idea to breathe and live, you'll just see him sort of grow more and more obsessed with like the idea of getting back to Cersei at all costs, and that would play a little better. Having said that, I do think that Tyrion, Jaime, and Cersei, in a weird way, were like the heart of this episode.
Well, yeah,
and
they're
like
a really tragic triangle.
Yeah, and those siblings,
in the end.
those siblings and their complicated relationship with each other is like a weird sort of foundation that I can cling to in this episode, because it makes sense. And the fact, you know, Jaime saved Tyrion, and now Tyrion in turn saves Jaime, and you know, Jaime's always going to be drawn back to Cersei. Cersei in the previous episode, like she hates Tyrion, but she can't kill him. I really like those dynamics and those relationships, and I'm saddened that, I mean, technically we didn't see Cersei and Jaime die. I think we can assume they died because
they're
like
crushed
everything,
underneath the castle.
crushed under them. I'm just hesitant in a show like this to assume anything without seeing a corpse.
But like, who knows?
Dead.
Like, yeah,
I think they're dead, and that makes me a little sad, because I think their relationship has been like one of the most complex and rewarding parts of the show.
And you make a good point about with this show. If you don't see the body burning,
right,
you don't know. Because Arya had her. Listen, I'm glad that Arya didn't die. I was very upset for half a second when I thought Arya was dead. But that was some Walking Dead shit. I'm sorry. Everyone around her turned into Pompeii ash shapes.
Right. Like
she's just a little dusty.
Yeah.
It was very, very, it was the kind of shit they'd pull on The Walking Dead. And I was kind of like mad. I was pretty mad. I was a mad queen about that one. I was like, come on, you guys. Because the details, not only in the characters, but in like the logistics of the world, have been pretty inconsistent this season too. Like last week I definitely bitched about Tiny Mormont, and this week I'm confused about the Dragonfire. I suppose it's another unearned character thing for Daenerys, but like, if she can focus the Dragonfire enough to kill Varys with people standing 10 feet away and them not even get singed, then why wasn't she able to fly up to the Red Keep, look Cersei in the eyes, and just
exactly
end it right there?
I sort of thought that when she started going off, she was just going to go to the Red Keep.
That's what I thought
destroy
too.
the Red Keep. You can leave most of the city intact. She'd probably still kill some civilians as like the Red Keep falls and
they're
crushes
in
people
there,
around.
yeah.
But she could have just like went for where she could be pretty certain Cersei was.
Yeah.
Was in the Red Keep.
In
and
one
leave
of the
rest
towers,
of the city
specifically.
intact. And she just, it's like that was an afterthought. She starts burning the city and then goes to the Red Keep.
Yeah.
Which is, unnecessary. And again, sort of out of pace with the character that's been established thus far. Going back to Arya,
Yes.
I ultimately liked that she had this moment with the Hound where the Hound is like basically, do not live a life based solely on revenge.
Yeah.
I have done it and it has turned me into a monster.
Right.
And he doesn't want that to Arya. I could see that being really effective. Before they get to like within a few feet of Cersei, and over the course again of like maybe a whole chapter, maybe a whole part of a book,
Half a book,
where they
probably.
have this like another great relationship in this series, and then a moment that feels like it could happen with more time, but the way they did it totally unearned. That Arya would just turn away from her revenge and be like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it almost came off as Arya was like a scared girl who was being protected by the big man, which like bothered me because like that's not the character of Arya
and
at all.
I don't think that's what they were trying to get across. But
But
when you don't
it
give
just
it time,
like it was rushed like that, and especially maybe I was a little like keyed up and looking for, I don't know, sexist storylines just because like Daenerys
whole
was
thing
so
is so
enraging.
Yep.
But like
doesn't-
I was like, oh, so I mean, I guess like after years of therapy, Arya could accept that she too needs to be protected sometimes. But it happened in like 10 seconds, like you said, which
like
was
the show no longer has
okay.
the benefit of the doubt for me.
Yeah.
With what it's doing.
And I understand the purpose of Arya running through the streets because they needed a POV character to show all the destruction like down on the ground. The combination, I don't know, like firebombing of Dresden and Pompeii that was happening in this battle. If you can even call it a battle, it was more of a massacre. Yeah,
I think this was the most violent the show has been, which is saying something.
You think so?
I think so. I think they really took a lot of time to show all of these people burning alive.
There are some juicy headshots.
Yeah.
Some people get some heads
There's
getting cut off.
A lot of blood splurting. Tyrion at one point is just walking through a lot of people who are like burning but still alive and like moaning on the ground.
Yeah.
And then there's the massacre of all the civilians by Daenerys and by like her army. And then if we can get to Cleganebowl.
Well, I was gonna say
that is also just a viscerally brutal scene.
Well, yeah, what I was gonna say is one of the really gnarly deaths that I loved was when Qyburn just falls down the stairs and then you see his head all like squished open on the ground like and it's like, oh,
that was the funniest
all
death.
right. Yeah,
And I
that was actually kind of fun.
Funny in a way that the Mountain suddenly sees the Hound and is just like, nah, I got business, don't care about you, Qyburn. I'm gonna just
Swaps
smack
the
you down
fly
the
off
stairs.
his head.
And
Yeah.
Cersei's like sneaking away, like,
Oh yeah. Cersei being like, oh,
Yeah.
gotta go.
I gotta say that Cleganebowl, and I think maybe this is the showrunners being smart about just like giving me what I want out of this episode. I was very excited to see them finally tee off, and I love how they made the Mountain this undead monster who like takes the sword out, is so
of his head
and the only way the Hound kills him is it was great, and I loved every minute of that scene.
That was like, yes, some definitely like satisfying high fantasy like action with the castle crumbling around them, and like there were some effective effects shots in this one with the dragon. Like I loved when during Cleganebowl when you saw the dragon fly by in the background, and actually I liked in the scene when Varys gets killed when the dragon comes out from the shadows behind Daenerys. I was like, cool.
I like the way after Daenerys said Dracarys. Drogon really, he just took his time.
Yeah.
He just took his time. He was like, I'm going to rear up, I'm going to lick you down, and then I'm going to kill you.
Well, I got to say R.I.P. Varys, because he was one of my top 5 characters, and I loved Varys. But, I mean, they really nipped that whole Jon Snow is the true king of Westeros thing in the bud, or did they?
Well, Here's my question.
The Starks still know.
Yeah, and did Varys, so he burned at least one of his letters when he heard the Unsullied march into his door and he knew what was coming.
What did it matter at that point?
Well, my question is...
If he got caught with the letter, he knows he's going to die anyway.
Did he send out previous letters? I think he might have.
He might have.
Yeah.
Because there were 2 scenes of... Because the opening shot of the episode was him writing a letter.
Right.
And then
he was
and then it's like a whole scene
one.
later. Yeah, maybe he's sending them out to all the houses.
All the houses. There's like this mysterious Prince of Dorne that we haven't seen.
Yeah, we haven't seen at all.
Yeah, there's some unknowns. So I think
Dude, do you think they're going to bring that thing in from the book? Remember where there's like the lost Targaryen in the book? Do you think they're going to...
But I don't
in
think
the
so.
last fucking second, they're going to bring that in?
I don't think so,
That'd be like if Lady Stoneheart walked out in the very last episode of the show and you're like, okay.
I really thought Lady Stoneheart might come to Arya's aid, but that was reaching. No, I don't think they're going to introduce any more big plot points at this point because they just can't because they have one episode left.
It would be wild if they did.
Here's the thing. I do think they have to do something crazy and big. I was kind of hoping it would be something magical, like with Bran or with the Lord of Light, like something they've been sort of... This whole series and from the books has had these sort of competing magical religions. And it would be cool if they finally did something big with one of those.
I kind of thought that maybe the horse that came to get Arya at the end was magic. There was a joke on Twitter that just made me laugh really hard. I was logging on Twitter like, time to be mad online. And then someone tweeted, Bran sent an Uber to come get Arya. And I just laughed and it just totally lightened the mood for me.
I kind of liked that
was kind of magical.
Yeah, it felt like sort of an Arthurian legend moment.
Yes.
Like very mythical, very sort of like England myth making in that moment, which I like that the show would do something sort of weird and out of left field like that.
Well, I thought it was symbolic for a second, and because the episode ended right there, I was like, oh, it's the white horse of death, man.
She did.
Whoa. But then they showed her in the next on, so she said it actually.
And I think so. You want to talk about predictions for the final episode of
Game of Thrones? At this point, like, I don't know, like, last week, like, kind of drained my excitement a little bit, and this episode too, like, I'm kind of walking into the, like, I'm a little bummed because I'm walking into the final episode of Game of Thrones with my arms crossed and like a sour look on my face.
Yeah.
And I think the show's going to have to do a fair amount of work to really, I mean, on the one hand, you can't give everyone what they want. But on the other hand, like, they should have accepted the 10-episode final season that HBO offered them to develop this more, to make it make more sense.
Right.
But
it's not what they did, it's how they did it. Like, they could have gotten there if they had just let it breathe.
Yeah, and I actually do believe that if this had unfolded over an entire 1,000-page novel, that it would have worked.
And you can see why it's taking Martin so goddamn long to write these books, because he has to get from Daenerys not being mad to Daenerys being mad, and maybe that's going to take like a really long time.
Yeah.
And just like a lot of work from a novelist writing standpoint to get there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is fair that he's taking his time.
He also likes being on TV, let's be real.
But more than ever, I feel a little sympathy to Martin's extended
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yes,
I would agree with that. Yeah, like, he doesn't have a very easy, I mean, just the way showing that the show is going shows that he does not have an easy task if he wants this to be a satisfying ending to the books. And he created the books, so one assumes he cares more than anyone, you know? But... in the last episode, the final episode of Game of Thrones, at this point, I've thought about it. And if we're just going to write off Daenerys, which fine, I can accept it, like, what's done is done. Sansa Stark on the Iron Throne. Sansa Stark for the Iron Throne. This is where I'm landing at this point.
We were talking earlier how she's very good at logistics. She really sort of understands just like what people need from a leader. She has a plan.
Like Elizabeth Warren, which we won't get into or I'll get very upset.
But Sansa Stark has a plan. And I mean, some of my predictions are born out of texting with my family this morning.
Oh,
but,
interesting. Okay.
They're all book readers like me, like we all.
Okay. My mom is like, I listen to your podcast, honey. And I'm like, but Mom, you don't watch that show.
Aww.
And she was like, yeah, I didn't really understand it, but you did great. Thanks, Mom. Hi, Mom.
That's so sweet. Yeah, my family's like, but what about this theory that I saw on Reddit?
Oh, I love it.
Oh my God.
What does your family think?
So some of the theories that we've been texting about this morning, one is that Daenerys is going to try to Dracarys Jon. She's gonna burn him, and he's also gonna be unburnt. He's gonna emerge from the fire unscathed, just like Daenerys did.
Yeah.
And he's gonna be like, what's up now? I'm a Targaryen. and then
Well, they all know. They already know he's a Targaryen.
Yeah,
well,
but
I guess everyone would
prove,
know.
Yeah, like
everyone would know he was a Targaryen.
This would be proof of his parentage.
Yeah,
because you're right. It's just like a couple people say he is.
Right.
Daenerys can be like, "Well, I'm going to kill you," and then this will be his moment.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that's
a good, because they did some. There was. The next on was very vague, but they showed a shot of all the Unsullied and the Dothraki all lined up on the stairs to somewhere. I'm not sure where, because everywhere's pretty much gone now.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was practically, I keep making Star Wars references. I'm very sorry if you don't know Star Wars. But it was very Darth Vader kind of moment, her coming out with her, minions on either side. And that could be the scene that you are describing.
Right. And my other prediction is that I think Jon Snow truly doesn't want to sit on the Iron Throne, and the Lord of Light brought him back for a reason, which Melisandre made clear, that Beric Dondarrion was also brought back for a reason, which was like to sort of keep Arya alive so she could kill the Night King. So I think the Lord of Light has like a purpose for people who he brings back from the dead, and it's possible that the reason Jon was brought back was to kill Daenerys, and then someone else could sit on the Iron Throne, and who else is from a noble house who has technically Targaryen blood and who doesn't want to sit in the Iron Throne is Gendry Baratheon.
Oh!
Because Robert's grandmother was a Targaryen.
Okay.
So you could argue that he actually fits all the qualifications that Jon Snow also fits. But if Jon Snow is going to die after he kills Daenerys, then maybe Gendry will take it.
Or if they come in totally wild in the ending, there is that fan theory that Tyrion is a Targaryen.
True.
Yeah.
That could be a big, I think
that could be a big surprise.
Clearly the writers are more concerned with
Tyrion,
upending expectations than anything.
Because Tyrion is very much at this point in the story prepared to die, I think.
And he is also the most measured, most moral sort of character.
Yeah, he would be a good ruler. He would. Yeah. He'd have a lot of cleaning up to do, though. Like, after this point, like, definitely Daenerys, if she stays on the throne, will have to rule with fear her entire
Well, and she's also going to be ruling over a city of rubble. It's like, what was the point of all that?
Yeah. Whoever's left is going to hate her. Absolutely hate her.
Right. So someone good needs to step up and take over and just clean things up.
Yeah, I think there is going to be some sort of big public reckoning between Daenerys and the other characters, but every time I make a prediction about Game of Thrones, it's completely wrong.
No, we're putting this in posterity in this podcast so that we can be proven very wrong later.
Every time.
I don't think these things are going to happen because I've never been right.
Listen, I thought Varys was going to save the day last week, and that's definitely not true. R.I.P., man. Master of Whispers.
Well, I think we have to wrap up now. But it's been good. I'm looking forward to the final episode.
Much like Game of Thrones.
I have no idea. It's time. Our watch has ended.
We have a limited amount of time, much like the show Game of Thrones. So please, we are on iTunes and everywhere you can find your podcast. Please listen, rate, subscribe, come in a little clutch, guys. And also, while you're there, we have another podcast called Dial M for Maple for all you Riverdale fans out there. So join us for that and come back next week. It's the big day that we've all been waiting for so long. The final episode of Game of Thrones. Next week on Winter is Here with the AV Club. Thanks for listening or watching, however you are joining us this week. And we'll see you for the final episode next week. Oh my God. Damn. It's been so long.
It's been a long time coming.
Oh man. Can't wait.
Well, we're glad you're joining us for the last of it. Bye.
Bye.